You're on the Real News here with Farron and Brian. We will be joined with Congresswoman Virginia Foxx. You're listening to the Liberty News Radio Network. We're streaming at libertynewsradio.com here on WSIC 1400, 1520 WDSL. Brian, I wanted to start with, this was in the news this week. Maybe we can mention this to Virginia Foxx. This is AP. The Federal Reserve on Friday said the government is prepared to rescue any of the banks that underwent stress tests. The Federal Reserve said the government is prepared to rescue any of the banks. Makes you wonder who really has the power here. That were deemed vulnerable if the recession worsened sharply. The Fed has outlined the test, said the 19 companies that hold one half of the loans in the U.S. banking system won't be allowed to fail even if they fared poorly on the stress test. You can fail the test and still be bailed out, apparently. So what is your opinion of that?
Well, it seems like the Federal Reserve is obviously trying to take over all the banks in the country, and this is just one more means to do that, period.
All right, well, let's just go with it, Brian. We've got to end the Fed protest today. Charlotte Federal Reserve branch, it starts at 10, ends at 3 p.m. We will not be able to attend until about 12 o'clock.
Noon, yeah.
But, again, a Federal Reserve, this is at all. How many branches is there, Brian?
I believe there's 38.
38 branches. It's another nationwide protest, just like we saw at the Tea Party event last week. And we will be attending the Charlotte branch. So I urge everyone to get out. Let's give the people just a little background on the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve banking system started in 1913. Since then, they have hijacked our financial system. They have run up massive debt. When you're born in this country, you're $70,000 in debt to the Federal Reserve banking system, which, according to this AP report, the Federal Reserve on Friday said the government is prepared to rescue any of the banks because the Federal Reserve banking system is the controlling interest of the government. They run this government, and we're going to ask Ms. Foxx about that when we have her on. I'm not shortly. So we are, excuse us if we're having a little technical difficulty, but Brian, go ahead and give us a little more information on the Federal Reserve.
Again, this has absolutely nothing to do with the federal government whatsoever. This is a private bank. It's neither federal nor a reserve, no more federal than Federal Express. And it's astounding that most people in the United States, most of the population actually believe the Federal Reserve to be a branch of the federal government, when in reality, not only does it not have anything to do with the federal government, but it's a private bank.
It's a private bank masquerading as a government entity. And again, as I know we've covered for those that's listened to this broadcast, when the Treasury prints money, it is face value plus interest, and it is on loan to the American people from the Federal Reserve banking system. That's why your money says Federal Reserve note on it. And there is a bill in Congress to abolish the Federal Reserve. Tell us that statute number again.
It's H.R. 833, introduced by none other than Congressman Ron Paul.
Which, of all the bills in Congress, I know there's several that are very important. This, in my opinion, is one of the most important, if not the most important. Also, H.R. 1207 to audit the Federal Reserve.
Transparency.
Transparency. I believe Virginia Foxx is a signer on that. So we will.
That actually has a good bit of support now. It's like 80 congressional members have signed up to that now. So I believe Ron Paul is the only one to be supporting H.R. 833 at the moment. It kind of makes you realize who's actually representing the people in this country as far as congressional members, if no one is willing to sign on to this bill other than Ron Paul.
Well, I know a lot of people are unaware of the Federal Reserve banking system and what's involved, but once I started studying, I was just amazed that this, of course, is not taught in school. It goes widely unreported. Now that we've had the economic collapse, we've got propaganda such as Glenn Beck, Sean Hannity, some of the rest of them getting involved. It's being pointed out, but me and you have talked about, and it's something I find interesting, we're out protesting against the Federal Reserve banking system. I think we're going to see the end of the Federal Reserve banking system. They're going to say, oh, yes, this was bad. Now, well, let's give you the world Federal Reserve banking system or something of that nature. And it will be the problem, reaction, solution. They gave us the problem. They got a reaction. Now they gave us the solution, the new world control, which is what they wanted to begin with. So I think that's what we're going to be seeing. But again, in the Fed protest in Charlotte. Next week we may have on someone from Campaign for Liberty. Campaign for Liberty is an organization that has sprung up since the campaign for the presidency of Ron Paul, and we're hoping that we will have someone on. Take it and see. Looking for. Hey, are you with me? Hello, are you with me today? Okay. Again, sorry, we're having just a little bit of technical difficulties here. We're flying by.
Make a call.
Just a tad. So, again, in the Fed protest, we're waiting on a phone call from Virginia Foxx. Going to be our interview today. Next hour, we will take your phone calls. And I wanted to mention something.
We may have an update from the Fed from Mr. Flintlock, local patriot and researcher.
Okay, what number is he calling in on?
1400.
Are you? U.S. loan for the IMF. President Barack Obama on Monday proposed a $100 billion U.S. loan to the International Monetary Fund to boost the IMF's resources and urged a bigger stake in the IMF for emerging powers. This is the United States government bankrupt beyond belief, $12 trillion past bankrupt, throwing $12 trillion down a black hole to oblivion, and we're still going around the world masquerading as a philanthropist and going to give money to the IMF. In a letter to U.S. congressional leaders, Obama said the U.S. funding does not represent a budgetary expenditure or any increase in the deficit, since it effectively represents an exchange of assets. Sounds like smoke and mirrors to me. The $100 billion is part of commitments made by a group of 20 countries at a London summit on April 2nd, which agreed to triple IMF resources to a total of $750 billion to help the IMF respond to crisis in emerging markets economies as a result of the global financial crisis and economic turndown. Brian, we're seeing the federal government still trying to masquerade as a country that can go around the world and dole off the trillions. Here, $100 billion U.S. loan.
Well, I think the IMF, World Bank are going to be, like you had mentioned earlier, the new Federal Reserve System for the entire planet. The central bank. It's no surprise that we keep doling out trillions to them, and I mean that's where all the money's going to go eventually anyway, so I guess we're just getting a head start.
We got 1 minute before we go to a break. Look at the next one, and this is Yahoo News. IMF approves a $47 billion credit line for Mexico. The International Monetary Fund says it's approved a $47 billion flexible credit line for Mexico. So America gives the IMF $100 billion. The IMF gives Mexico $47 billion. American people, can you connect the dots? Your money just went to Mexico. You're on the hook for it. And your great-grandchildren will be attempting to pay it back. And our federal government has completely lost its way, any semblance or resemblance of representing us, we the people. All right, we're going to a break, and we will be back on The Real News here in 3 minutes.